My name is Winnie Harper, and I'm 68 years old. For 45 years, I was married to a man I thought I knew, a man I trusted, a man I built a life with. But 3 months ago, I sat in a divorce courtroom and discovered I'd been married to a liar. My husband, Sterling Harper, stood at the witness stand, under oath, and told lie after lie about our marriage, our finances, and our life together. He claimed I'd contributed nothing to our wealth, that I'd been unemployed for decades, that the house we lived in was his alone, that the business he'd built was entirely his doing. He painted me as a lazy, dependent woman who'd lived off his hard work for 45 years. And he would have gotten away with it, would have walked away with everything while leaving me with almost nothing, if I hadn't prepared. For 6 months before filing for divorce, I'd been documenting everything. Every lie he told, every asset he tried to hide, every truth he attempted to bury. I had bank statements, property deeds, business records, emails, text messages, and witness testimonies. I had a folder 3 inches thick containing proof of everything he claimed wasn't true. When my lawyer Artie Chen stood up and said, "Your Honor, we have evidence that contradicts Mr. Harper's testimony," Sterling's face went pale. When Artie began presenting that evidence, document after document proving Sterling had lied under oath, Sterling's jaw literally dropped open. He stared at me across the courtroom with a mixture of shock, horror, and rage. He couldn't believe I'd outsmarted him. Couldn't believe the quiet, submissive wife he'd taken for granted had been 10 steps ahead of him the entire time. And when the judge looked at Sterling and said, "Mr. Harper, these documents suggest you've committed perjury. Do you have an explanation?" Sterling had no words. His lies had caught up with him, and I was the one who'd made sure they did. But to understand how we got to that moment, how a 45-year marriage ended with my husband speechless and exposed in court, I need to take you back to where it all began. I met Sterling Harper in 1980 when I was 23 years old. I was working as a secretary at a small manufacturing company in Atlanta. Sterling was 30, a salesman for a competing company, and he swept me off my feet. He was charming, ambitious, confident. He talked about his dreams of starting his own business someday, of building something significant, of creating wealth. "I'm going to be successful, Winnie," Sterling told me on our 3rd date. "Really successful, and I want someone by my side who believes in me, who'll support me while I build something great." "I believe in you," I said, and I meant it. We married 6 months later in a small ceremony. I was 23, he was 30, and we were both full of hope and dreams. "We're a team," Sterling said on our wedding night. "Everything we build together. Everything we achieve together. It's us against the world." I believed him. For the first 20 years of our marriage, I genuinely believed we were partners building a life together. I was wrong. The first 10 years of our marriage were hard, but hopeful. Sterling worked as a salesman while trying to save money to start his own business. I continued working as a secretary, contributing my entire paycheck to our joint savings. We lived in a tiny apartment, drove used cars, ate cheaply, and saved every penny we could. By 1985, we'd saved $30,000, enough for Sterling to quit his job and start his own manufacturing supply company, Harper Industries. "This is it, Winnie," Sterling said excitedly. "This is our chance to build something, to create real wealth, to have the life we've dreamed about." "Our chance," I repeated, emphasizing the word. "We're doing this together." "Absolutely," Sterling agreed. "I couldn't do this without you." For the first 5 years of Harper Industries, I worked alongside Sterling. I answered phones, managed paperwork, handled bookkeeping, dealt with suppliers, and did whatever needed doing. I also kept working my secretary job part-time to ensure we had steady income while the business got established. I worked 12-hour days between both jobs, came home exhausted, and did it all again the next day. Sterling worked hard too, traveling to meet clients, negotiating deals, expanding the business. But I was the backbone keeping everything running while he was on the road. By 1990, Harper Industries was profitable. By 1995, it was thriving. By 2000, Sterling was a millionaire. We'd done it. We'd built something from nothing, together. Or so I thought. Something changed in Sterling around 2000, when he turned 50, and the business was solidly successful. He started talking differently about the company. Instead of "we built this and our business," he started saying, "I built this and my company." "Sterling, we built this together," I reminded him once. "I worked just as hard as you did in those early years." "You answered phones, Winnie," Sterling said dismissively. "I built relationships with clients. I negotiated deals. I grew this business. You helped, sure. But let's be honest about who actually created this success." I was stunned. "Helped? I did more than help. I managed everything while you traveled. I kept us afloat financially while the business found its footing." "And I appreciate that," Sterling said in a patronizing tone. "You were a supportive wife, but support isn't the same as building. I'm the entrepreneur. I'm the one who took the risks and made this happen." That conversation was the first crack in our marriage. But I told myself it was just stress, just Sterling feeling defensive, just a momentary lapse. I was wrong. It wasn't momentary. It was the beginning of a pattern that would define the next 25 years. As Harper Industries grew, Sterling systematically excluded me from the business. In the early years, we discussed everything: major decisions, financial strategies, expansion plans. We were partners. But after 2000, Sterling stopped including me in discussions. He stopped asking my opinion. He stopped valuing my input. "Why don't you tell me about the business anymore?" I asked in 2005. "Because you don't understand it," Sterling said. "It's become complex, technical. You wouldn't get it." "I could learn," I protested. "Winnie, you don't have a business degree," Sterling said. "You were a secretary. That's fine, someone has to answer phones. But strategic business decisions, that's not your area." "I helped build this company," I said. "You helped in the beginning," Sterling corrected. "When it was small and simple. But I've taken it to levels you can't comprehend. You should be grateful I've provided this lifestyle for you instead of trying to claim credit you don't deserve." Each conversation like this chipped away at my sense of worth, my confidence, my understanding of our partnership. By 2010, I'd completely withdrawn from any involvement with Harper Industries. Not because I wanted to, but because Sterling had made it clear I wasn't wanted. Around the same time Sterling was excluding me from the business, he also started isolating me socially. We'd always attended business events, charity galas, and social functions together. I'd built friendships with other wives, connections with business associates. But Sterling started going to events alone. "This is a business dinner, Winnie," he'd say. "You'd be bored, stay home." "I'd like to come," I'd protest. "I know these people, I enjoy these events." "You don't fit in anymore," Sterling said bluntly. "These are high-level business people discussing complex topics. You make small talk about gardening and recipes. It's embarrassing." "Embarrassing," I repeated, hurt. "I need a wife who can hold her own in these circles," Sterling said. "Who understands business, who can contribute to conversations. You're just not at that level." So I stayed home while Sterling attended events. And slowly, I lost touch with the social circle we'd built together. By 2015, I was isolated. No involvement in the business. Few social connections. Dependent entirely on Sterling for financial security and social standing. Which was exactly what Sterling wanted. In 2018, I discovered Sterling was having an affair. I found emails on his computer, messages to a woman named Dovie Marshall who worked at Harper Industries. The messages were explicit, romantic, and had been going on for at least 2 years. I confronted Sterling with the evidence. "You're having an affair," I said, my voice shaking. "With Dovie Marshall, I found the emails." Sterling didn't deny it. "Yes, I am." "How could you?" I asked. "After 40 years of marriage." "Because I'm not happy, Winnie," Sterling said coldly. "I haven't been happy for years. You're boring. You're unambitious. You contribute nothing to my life except demands and complaints. I'm your wife, I said. You're an obligation, Sterling corrected. A leftover from when I was a different person. Dovey is exciting, ambitious. She understands business. She's the kind of woman a man like me should be with. Are you saying you want a divorce? I asked. No, Sterling said. Divorce would be expensive. I'm saying I want you to accept that I have needs you can't meet. If you're smart, you'll look the other way and be grateful I'm still providing for you. I was devastated, but I didn't leave. I didn't demand a divorce. I didn't fight back. Why? Because I was scared. Scared of being alone at 61. Scared of losing financial security. Scared of starting over after 40 years. So I stayed, and Sterling continued his affair openly, barely bothering to hide it. For 5 years, I lived in a marriage that was a shell. Sterling barely spoke to me. He spent most nights either at the office or, I suspected, with Dovey. He made it clear I was tolerated, not valued. But I stayed, because I didn't think I had options. Because I'd been told for so long that I'd contributed nothing, that I had no claim to anything, that I should be grateful for what Sterling provided. Then in 2023, when I was 66, something happened that changed everything. Sterling came home and announced, I'm selling Harper Industries. I've got an offer for $25 million. The sale should close in 6 months. $25 million, I repeated. That's incredible. It is, Sterling agreed. I've built something remarkable. This sale is the culmination of 40 years of my work. Our work, I corrected automatically. Sterling laughed. Your work, Winnie, what exactly did you do? You answered phones for 5 years in the early 90s. That's it. I built this company. I created this value. This $25 million is mine. We're married, I said. We live in a community property state. Half of everything is. Half of nothing, Sterling interrupted. The business is in my name only. The house is in my name only. Our bank accounts are in my name only. Everything is mine, Winnie, legally mine. That can't be right, I protested. It's completely right, Sterling said smugly. I made sure of it years ago. When the sale goes through, I'll have $25 million, and you'll have whatever I decide to give you. I can file for divorce, I said. The courts will. The courts will give you what you're entitled to, Sterling agreed. Which is very little. You haven't worked in decades. You've contributed nothing to the business. You've lived off my income for years. At best, you'll get some temporary spousal support until you can support yourself. I'm 66 years old, I said. How am I supposed to support myself? That's your problem, Sterling said coldly. You should have thought about that before spending 40 years doing nothing. That night, lying in bed alone while Sterling was probably with Dovey, I made a decision. I was going to file for divorce, and I wasn't going to let Sterling steal everything we'd built together. But I knew Sterling was smart, connected, and ruthless. If I was going to fight him, I needed to be smarter. I needed evidence, documentation, proof of everything Sterling was trying to hide. And I needed to collect it all before he knew I was planning to leave. The next morning, I started what would become a 6-month investigation into my own marriage and my husband's business. First, I contacted a divorce lawyer discreetly. Artie Chen was recommended as someone who handled high-asset divorces and wasn't afraid to fight dirty when necessary. Tell me your situation, Artie said at our first confidential meeting. I explained everything, the 45-year marriage, the business I'd helped build, Sterling's systematic exclusion of me, his affair, his claim that everything was his alone. He says the business is in his name only, I said, that I have no claim to it. Is that true? Not necessarily, Artie said. Georgia is an equitable distribution state, not community property. But courts consider contributions to marital assets, even non-financial contributions. If you can prove you contributed to building the business, you have a claim. But it was 30 years ago, I said. How do I prove my contributions now? Documents, Artie said. Witnesses. Anything that shows what you did in those early years. Also, we need to investigate whether your husband is hiding assets, undervaluing the business, or planning to move money before the divorce. How do we do that? I asked. You gather evidence, Artie said. Every document you can find, every email, every financial statement, every piece of paper that tells the story of your marriage and your contributions. Won't he notice if I'm going through his things? I worried. Be careful, Artie advised. Don't take anything that would be obviously missing. Make copies, photograph documents, access his email if you can. Build a case without him knowing you're building it. That sounds like spying on my own husband, I said. It is, Artie confirmed. But your husband is planning to leave you with nothing after 45 years. You're just protecting yourself. The law allows you to gather evidence of marital assets. Okay, I decided. Tell me what to do. For 6 months, I became a detective in my own home. Sterling had a home office where he kept business files, financial documents, and his computer. He usually locked the door, but I had a key he didn't know I'd copied years ago. When Sterling was at work or with Dovey, I'd go into his office and photograph documents. Financial statements showing the business's true value. Property deeds showing houses and land Sterling owned that he'd never mentioned to me. Bank statements showing accounts I'd never known existed. I found emails between Sterling and his accountant discussing strategies to minimize wife's potential claims in divorce. Emails about moving money to offshore accounts. Emails about undervaluing the business in case of marital dissolution. Sterling had been planning this for years. He'd been systematically hiding assets, preparing for the day when he'd leave me with nothing. But now I had proof. I also tracked down people who'd known us in the early years of Harper Industries. Former employees who remembered me working alongside Sterling. Suppliers who dealt with me when I was managing operations. Accountants who'd seen both our names on early business documents. I collected testimonies from people who could verify my contributions to building the company. And I found the most damning evidence of all, the original partnership agreement from 1985. When Sterling started Harper Industries, he drafted a simple partnership agreement making us equal owners of the business, 50% him, 50% me. We'd both signed it. But at some point, I discovered it was 1998. Sterling had filed new paperwork claiming he was sole owner. He'd forged my signature on documents dissolving our partnership. I had the original 1985 partnership agreement with my genuine signature, and I had the 1998 documents with my forged signature. A handwriting expert could prove they weren't the same. Sterling had literally committed fraud to steal half my business. By the time I'd collected all my evidence, I had 3 thick folders and hundreds of digital files proving. 1. I'd contributed significantly to building Harper Industries in its early years. 2. Sterling had systematically hidden assets and undervalued the business. 3. Sterling had committed fraud by forging my signature to steal my ownership stake. 4. Sterling had been planning for years to leave me with nothing in a divorce. I was ready. In January 2025, when I was 67 and Sterling was 74, I filed for divorce. Sterling was served with papers at his office. According to his secretary, who I'd befriended and who disliked Sterling intensely, his reaction was shock followed by rage. He came home that evening furious. "You filed for divorce," Sterling shouted, "without even discussing it with me." "There's nothing to discuss," I said calmly. "You've been planning to leave me with nothing. I'm not going to let that happen." "You won't get anything," Sterling said. "I've been careful. Everything is in my name. Everything is protected. You'll walk away with nothing but temporary spousal support." "We'll see," I said. "I have the best lawyers money can buy," Sterling threatened. "They'll destroy you in court. They'll prove you contributed nothing to my success. You'll be humiliated." "Maybe," I said. "Or maybe I have surprises you're not expecting." "Like what?" Sterling scoffed. "What could you possibly have? You're a housewife who answered phones 30 years ago. You have nothing." "I guess we'll find out in court," I said. Sterling's lawyer, Burl Stone, a notorious divorce attorney who specialized in protecting wealthy men's assets, filed an immediate response claiming I was entitled to minimal spousal support and nothing else. The divorce proceedings began, and Sterling was confident he'd win. He had no idea what was coming. 3 months later, we went to court for the divorce hearing. Sterling arrived with Burl Stone and an air of arrogant confidence. He sat at the defendant's table looking smug, certain he'd already won. I sat with Artie Chen, my folders of evidence hidden in my bag, waiting for the right moment. The judge, Royal Martinez, called the court to order. "We're here for the dissolution of marriage between Winnie Harper and Sterling Harper," Judge Martinez said. "Mr. Stone, you may call your first witness." "The defense calls Sterling Harper," Burl Stone announced. Sterling took the witness stand and was sworn in. He raised his right hand and swore to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. Then he proceeded to lie, for 45 minutes straight. He claimed the business was entirely his creation, that I'd never been involved beyond some secretarial work in the early days, that I'd been unemployed for decades, contributing nothing while living off his hard work. He claimed all assets, the house, the business, the bank accounts, the investments, were his alone, that I'd never contributed financially to anything. He claimed I'd been a difficult, demanding wife who'd made his life miserable while contributing nothing of value. Lie after lie after lie, all under oath. Artie took notes but didn't object. We were letting Sterling dig his own grave. Finally, Burl Stone finished his questions. "No further questions, Your Honor." Judge Martinez looked at Artie. "Ms. Chen, cross-examination." "Not at this time, Your Honor," Artie said. "But we do have evidence we'd like to present." "What kind of evidence?" Judge Martinez asked. "Evidence that contradicts Mr. Harper's testimony," Artie said. "Extensively." Sterling's confident expression faltered slightly. "Proceed," Judge Martinez said. Artie pulled out the first folder. "Your Honor, we have documents showing Mrs. Harper's contributions to Harper Industries in its early years. Employment records, business filings, witness testimonies." "Objection," Burl Stone stood up. "Your Honor, whatever contributions Mrs. Harper made 30 years ago don't entitle her to current business value. The business grew because of my client's efforts, not hers." "We'll address that," Artie said smoothly. "But first, we need to establish that Mr. Harper lied under oath about his wife's contributions. He claimed she did nothing but secretarial work. These documents prove otherwise." Judge Martinez examined the documents, employment records showing I'd been listed as operations manager of Harper Industries from 1985 to 1995. Business filings showing both Sterling and I were listed as company officers. Testimonies from former employees describing my extensive involvement in running the company. "Mr. Harper," Judge Martinez said slowly, "you testified that your wife did some secretarial work. But these documents show she was operations manager for 10 years. That's considerably more than secretarial work." She did administrative tasks," Sterling stammered. "I called her operations manager, but it was just a title. She wasn't actually managing anything strategic." "We have testimony from 5 former employees who report directly to Mrs. Harper and describe her as running daily operations while you handled sales," Artie said. "That's not just a title." Sterling's jaw tightened. This wasn't going how he'd planned. "There's more, Your Honor," Artie continued. "Mr. Harper testified that all marital assets are in his name and that Mrs. Harper has no claim to them. But we've discovered Mr. Harper has been hiding assets." "What kind of assets?" Judge Martinez asked. 3 properties in other states that he never disclosed," Artie said, presenting deeds. 2 offshore bank accounts. And most significantly, evidence that he's deliberately undervalued Harper Industries in preparation for this divorce. "That's not true," Sterling said from the witness stand. "I haven't hidden anything." "Your Honor, we have emails between Mr. Harper and his accountant specifically discussing how to minimize asset valuation. And protect assets from potential divorce claims, Artie said, presenting printed emails. Sterling's face went white. And finally, Artie said, pulling out the most damaging evidence, we have proof of fraud. Sterling's jaw literally dropped open. What kind of fraud? Judge Martinez asked, leaning forward with interest. In 1985, when Mr. and Mrs. Harper started Harper Industries, they signed a partnership agreement making them equal owners, Artie explained. We have the original agreement with both signatures. Artie presented the 1985 document. But in 1998, new paperwork was filed claiming Mr. Harper was sole owner, Artie continued. This paperwork included Mrs. Harper's signature dissolving the partnership. Artie presented the 1998 documents. The problem, Artie said, Mrs. Harper never signed those documents. The signature was forged. The courtroom went completely silent. Sterling sat frozen, his mouth open, unable to speak. We've had both signatures analyzed by a forensic handwriting expert, Artie said. The expert confirms the 1985 signature is genuine and the 1998 signature is forged. Mr. Harper committed fraud to steal his wife's ownership stake in the business. Judge Martinez looked at Sterling with disgust. Mr. Harper, do you have an explanation for this? Sterling said nothing. His jaw was still dropped in shock. He couldn't believe I'd found the evidence. Couldn't believe his lies were being exposed so completely. Mr. Stone, Judge Martinez prompted Sterling's lawyer. Burl Stone looked stunned. Your Honor, we need time to review this evidence. We were not aware. Your client wasn't aware that he forged his wife's signature, Judge Martinez asked skeptically. Or you weren't aware he'd done it. I was not aware, Burl Stone said carefully, clearly trying to distance himself from Sterling's fraud. We're taking a recess, Judge Martinez said. When we return, Mr. Harper, you're going to need to explain yourself. And Mr. Stone, you're going to need to decide if you want to continue representing a client who's committed perjury and fraud. The judge banged his gavel and left the courtroom. Sterling sat at the witness stand, still frozen in shock, staring at me across the courtroom. His jaw was still dropped. His eyes were wide with disbelief. He couldn't believe the quiet, submissive wife he'd dismissed and controlled for decades had just destroyed him in court. But I had, with evidence he never knew I'd collected, with documentation he thought he'd hidden successfully, with proof of lies he thought would never be exposed. And now, his entire strategy was collapsing. The man who'd lied for 45 minutes under oath now faced potential criminal charges for perjury and fraud. All because he'd underestimated his wife. This story is just beginning. Subscribe now. Hit that like button and turn on NOTFICTONS. Drop a comment. Do you think Winnie was right to secretly gather? Sustained, Judge Martinez said. Mrs. Harper, stick to what you know factually. I know factually that I never signed those 1998 documents, I said clearly. I know factually that I never gave verbal permission for my husband to remove me as co-owner. And I know factually that I would never have agreed to give up my ownership stake in a business I helped build. Thank you, Mrs. Harper, Artie said. No further questions. Burlstone approached for cross-examination. Mrs. Harper, you claim you helped build Harper Industries, Burl began. But isn't it true that you stopped working for the company in 1995, 30 years ago? Yes, I stopped working there in 1995, I confirmed. So for the past 30 years, while the company grew from a small operation to a business worth $25 million, you contributed nothing, Burl pressed. I contributed as a wife, I said. I managed our household so my husband could focus on work. I attended business events and supported him socially. I provided emotional support during difficult times. Those are contributions, even if they're not paid labor. But they're not business contributions, Burl argued. You didn't make sales calls, didn't negotiate contracts, didn't manage operations for the past 3 decades. I couldn't, I said, because my husband systematically excluded me from the business after 1995. He stopped discussing it with me, stopped valuing my input, stopped treating me as a partner. Or perhaps he stopped discussing it because you weren't contributing, Burrell suggested. I wasn't contributing because he wouldn't let me, I countered. There's a difference between choosing not to contribute and being excluded from contributing. Mrs. Harper, isn't it true that you've lived a comfortable life for 45 years thanks to your husband's income? Burrell asked. We both contributed to our comfortable life, I said. I contributed in the early years by helping build the business. I contributed throughout our marriage by managing our home and supporting my husband's career. So you're saying that managing a household is equivalent to building a $25 million business? Burrell asked sarcastically. I'm saying that marriage is a partnership, I said firmly. And in that partnership, I held up my end. My husband is trying to pretend I contributed nothing so he can keep everything. But I was there. I worked. I sacrificed. And I deserve to share in what we built together. No further questions, Burrell said, clearly not getting the answers he wanted. After my testimony, Artie called several witnesses to support my claims. First was Royal Henderson, who'd been one of Harper Industries' first employees in 1986. Mr. Henderson, what was Mrs. Harper's role at Harper Industries in the late 1980s? Artie asked. She ran everything, Royal said simply. Mr. Harper was on the road constantly, meeting clients and making sales. Mrs. Harper managed the office, handled suppliers, oversaw production schedules, managed employees. She was essentially the operations manager. Did Mr. Harper acknowledge her contributions at the time? Artie asked. Absolutely, Royal confirmed. He used to tell us all the time that the company wouldn't exist without Winnie, that she was keeping everything running while he focused on growth. When did that change? Mid-90s, Royal said. The company got bigger, Mr. Harper hired professional managers, and Mrs. Harper gradually stepped back. But those early years, she was crucial. Next, Artie called Zenobia Wright, an accountant who'd handled Harper Industries books from 1985 to 2000. Ms. Wright, who signed business documents for Harper Industries in the 1980s and early 1990s, Artie asked. Both Mr. and Mrs. Harper, Zenobia said. They were listed as co-owners on all the paperwork I handled. Tax returns, business licenses, bank accounts, both their names were on everything. When did that change? Around 1998, I started seeing documents with only Mr. Harper's name, Zenobia said. I remember being surprised because Mrs. Harper had always been involved. But Mr. Harper told me they'd restructured the ownership for tax purposes. Did you ever speak with Mrs. Harper about this restructuring? Artie asked. No, Zenobia admitted. I dealt primarily with Mr. Harper. I assumed Mrs. Harper knew about it. But you never actually confirmed that with her. No, I didn't. Finally, Artie called the handwriting expert, Homer Phillips, a forensic document examiner with 30 years of experience. Mr. Phillips, you examined 2 signatures purportedly made by Mrs. Harper, Artie said. What were your findings? The signatures are distinctly different, Homer said. The 1985 signature shows characteristics consistent with Mrs. Harper's verified signature samples, particular letter formations, pen pressure, and flow. The 1998 signature is clearly different. Different slant, different letter formations, different pressure patterns. In your professional opinion, did the same person sign both documents? Artie asked. No, Homer said definitively. In my professional opinion, the 1998 signature is a forgery. It was made by someone attempting to replicate Mrs. Harper's signature, but failing to match the subtle characteristics that make each person's signature unique. Could you determine who made the forged signature? Artie asked. I compared the forged signature to verified samples of Mr. Harper's handwriting, Homer said. There are similarities suggesting he may have been the forger, but I can't state that conclusively. What I can state conclusively is that Mrs. Harper did not sign the 1998 documents. Thank you, Mr. Phillips, Artie said. Burrell Stone tried to discredit the expert on cross-examination, but couldn't shake his conclusions. The evidence was clear. The signature was forged, and I'd never consented to giving up my ownership stake. After the witnesses testified, Judge Martinez called for another recess. When we returned, Sterling looked defeated. Burl Stone looked like he was trying to figure out how to abandon his client without facing ethical violations. "Mr. Harper," Judge Martinez said, "the evidence presented today is extremely troubling. We have multiple witnesses confirming your wife's contributions to Harper Industries. We have documentary evidence of hidden assets, and we have expert testimony confirming forgery." "Your Honor," Sterling started. "I'm not finished," Judge Martinez interrupted. "Mr. Harper, you took an oath to tell the truth. Instead, you lied extensively about your wife's contributions, about marital assets, and about the forgery. That's perjury, and the forgery itself is fraud. I'm referring this matter to the district attorney for potential criminal charges," Judge Martinez continued. "You may face prosecution for both perjury and fraud." Sterling's face went completely white. "Furthermore," Judge Martinez added, "I'm finding that Mrs. Harper is entitled to 50% of Harper Industries based on the original 1985 partnership agreement, which was never legally dissolved." "Your Honor, you can't," Burl protested. "I absolutely can," Judge Martinez said firmly. "The original partnership agreement is valid. The 1998 documents attempting to dissolve it are fraudulent. Therefore, Mrs. Harper remains a 50% owner of the company." "Additionally," the judge continued, "I'm ordering a full forensic accounting of all marital assets, including the hidden properties and offshore accounts Ms. Chen identified. I suspect we'll find Mr. Harper has hidden significantly more than what's been disclosed so far." "Your Honor, this is outrageous." Sterling finally found his voice. "You're destroying me based on lies and—" "Based on evidence," Judge Martinez corrected coldly. "Evidence that you tried to hide. Evidence that proves you've been lying, cheating, and stealing from your wife for decades." "I built that company," Sterling shouted. "I made it successful. She did nothing for 30 years. "She was your wife for 45 years, Judge Martinez said. "She supported you, enabled your career, and contributed in ways the law recognizes. And more importantly, she was your legal partner in the business, a partnership you fraudulently tried to dissolve." "This is my life's work," Sterling said desperately. "You can't just give half of it away." "I'm not giving it away," Judge Martinez said. "I'm restoring what was stolen. Mrs. Harper was always entitled to half. You're the one who tried to take it from her through fraud." Sterling stood there, breathing heavily, looking like he might have a heart attack. "This hearing is adjourned," Judge Martinez said. "We'll reconvene in 30 days after the forensic accounting is complete. Mr. Harper, I strongly suggest you cooperate fully. Continued obstruction will not help your situation." The gavel banged. The hearing was over. Outside the courtroom, Sterling's lawyer pulled him aside for what looked like a very serious conversation. I could see Burl Stone gesturing angrily, probably telling Sterling he should have been honest from the beginning. Artie and I walked to her car, both of us processing what had just happened. "That went better than I expected," Artie said. "Better?" I asked. "The judge is referring Sterling for criminal charges." "Exactly," Artie said. "Which means Sterling is motivated to settle. He'll want to avoid prosecution if possible. That gives us leverage." "What kind of settlement are we looking for?" I asked. "Ideally, 50% of all marital assets, including Harper Industries," Artie said. "But we might settle for slightly less if he agrees to drop certain claims and cooperate with the divorce." "I want what I'm entitled to," I said firmly. "After 45 years of being told I contributed nothing, I want acknowledgement that I helped build everything." "You'll get it," Artie assured me. "The judge already ruled you're entitled to 50% of the business. Sterling can fight it, but he'll lose, especially with criminal charges hanging over his head." "What happens now?" I asked. "The forensic accountant will examine all the finances," Artie explained. "They'll find every hidden asset, every offshore account, every property Sterling tried to conceal. It'll take about 30 days. Then we go back to court with a complete picture of marital assets." And Sterling. Sterling will either accept reality and settle, or he'll keep fighting and potentially face criminal prosecution, Artie said. My guess is he'll eventually settle. Men like him don't want the public humiliation of a criminal trial. 1 week after the hearing, Sterling showed up at our house, the house I was still living in pending the divorce settlement. I opened the door to find him standing there, looking 10 years older than he had a week ago. The confident, arrogant man who'd testified in court was gone. In his place was someone who looked exhausted, defeated, and desperate. Winnie, we need to talk, Sterling said. About what? I asked, not inviting him in. About this disaster, Sterling said. About the divorce, about everything. What's there to talk about? The judge made his rulings. Those rulings are going to destroy me, Sterling said. The criminal investigation, the forensic accounting, losing half the business, I'll be ruined. You'll have $12.5 million from the business sale, I pointed out. That's hardly ruined. That's not the point, Sterling said. My reputation is destroyed. People are going to know I committed fraud. I'll be a laughingstock. You should have thought about that before lying in court, I said coldly. Winnie, please, Sterling said, and I'd never heard him use that tone before, pleading, desperate. I'm asking you to be reasonable. Let's settle this privately. You get a fair amount, I avoid criminal charges, we both move on. A fair amount, I repeated. What do you consider fair? $5 million, Sterling said. 20% of the business value. That's more than generous considering you haven't worked in 30 years. The judge already ruled I'm entitled to 50%, I said. Why would I settle for 20? Because if you push this, I'll fight back, Sterling threatened, some of his old arrogance returning. I'll drag this out for years. I'll make it so expensive that your legal fees eat up whatever you win. Go ahead and try, I said calmly. I have evidence, I have witnesses. I have a judge who's already ruled in my favor. What do you have? I have money to fight, Sterling said. More money than you can imagine. I can outlast you in court. Actually, you can't, I said. Because the judge froze your assets pending the forensic accounting. You can't move money. You can't hide assets. You can't spend down the marital estate. You're stuck. Sterling's face showed he hadn't considered this. The judge didn't. The judge did, I confirmed. It's standard procedure when there's evidence of hidden assets. So no, Sterling, you can't drag this out forever. The assets are frozen until we settle. Sterling looked trapped. Winnie, I'm asking you, woman to woman, person to person, please don't destroy me over this. Woman to woman, I repeated incredulously. Sterling, you're not a woman, and you certainly never treated me like a person. You treated me like property, like an accessory, like something you owned and could dispose of when convenient. That's not fair, Sterling started. You lied about me in court, I said, my calm facade cracking. You stood under oath and said I contributed nothing, that I was just some lazy housewife living off your hard work. After I spent 10 years building that business alongside you, after I supported your career for 45 years. I didn't mean, Sterling tried. You absolutely meant it, I interrupted. You've been saying it for 25 years. You've been erasing my contributions, dismissing my value, treating me like I was worthless. Well, guess what? The court disagrees, the evidence disagrees, and I'm done accepting your version of reality. So you're going to take everything? Sterling asked bitterly. I'm going to take what I'm entitled to, I corrected. What I always should have had, what you tried to steal from me through fraud and lies. I gave you a good life, Sterling said desperately. A comfortable home, financial security, social status. Doesn't that count for anything? You gave me those things with money I helped you earn, I said. With a business I helped you build. You're not some generous benefactor who provided for me out of kindness. You're my husband who benefited from my labor and then tried to pretend I contributed nothing. Fine, Sterling said, his desperation turning to anger. Take half the business, take half of everything. I hope you're happy destroying the man you were married to for 45 years. I'm not destroying you, Sterling, I said quietly. I'm just refusing to let you destroy me. Sterling stood there for a moment, seeming to struggle with a response. Finally, he turned and walked away without another word. I closed the door and leaned against it, shaking. The confrontation had been harder than I'd expected. Not because I doubted my position, but because after 45 years, it was painful to see my marriage end in such bitterness and conflict. But I'd done the right thing. I'd stood up for myself. I'd fought for what I deserved. And I wasn't backing down now. 25 days after the courtroom hearing, I received a call from Artie Chen that would change everything. "Winnie, the forensic accountant just sent me her preliminary report," Artie said, her voice containing barely suppressed excitement. "You need to come to my office, now." "What did she find?" I asked. "Just come," Artie said. "You need to see this in person." An hour later, I sat in Artie's conference room staring at a 200-page forensic accounting report prepared by Pearlie Davis, a certified fraud examiner with 25 years of experience. What she discovered was staggering. Sterling didn't just hide a few assets, Artie explained. He's been systematically moving and concealing money for over 15 years. This report shows a pattern of financial deception that's actually criminal in scope. "How much?" I asked, almost afraid of the answer. "Conservatively, Sterling has hidden at least $8 million in assets beyond what he disclosed," Artie said. "Possibly more. The accountant is still tracking some international transfers." "8 million," I repeated, stunned. "Where, how?" Artie opened the report to a marked page. "Let me walk you through this." According to Pearlie's forensic report, Sterling had created a complex network of hidden assets. 5 undisclosed properties, 3 vacation homes in Florida, North Carolina, and Colorado, plus 2 commercial properties in Tennessee. Total value, approximately $2.3 million. 3 offshore bank accounts in the Cayman Islands and Switzerland, containing approximately $1.8 million. A second business. Sterling owned 50% of a manufacturing company in South Carolina called Precision Industries that he'd never mentioned. His stake was worth approximately $3 million. Investment accounts under false names. Using shell corporations, Sterling had investment accounts containing approximately $900,000. "How did he hide all of this?" I asked, overwhelmed. "Very carefully," Artie said. "He used shell corporations, nominee owners, and offshore structures. He filed the properties under corporate names. He set up the business partnership through intermediaries. He moved money through multiple transfers to obscure the trail." "This took planning," Artie continued. "Years of planning. He didn't just decide last year to hide assets for the divorce. He's been building this hidden empire for over a decade." "Why?" I asked. "Why did he need all this hidden money?" "Control," Artie said simply. "As long as you didn't know about these assets, he had complete control. If you ever left him or he decided to leave you, he could walk away with millions you didn't even know existed." "Also," Artie added, "I think he was preparing for this divorce long before he told you about it. The pattern of asset movement accelerated after his affair with Dovie Marshall started in 2016. He's been planning to leave you for years while pretending to be a faithful husband." I felt sick, not just at the financial betrayal, but at the calculated long-term deception. Sterling hadn't just lied in court. He'd been lying for years, building a secret life I knew nothing about. "What happens now?" I asked. "Now we go back to court with this report," Artie said. "The judge already ruled you're entitled to 50% of disclosed assets, but these hidden assets change everything." "How?" "Because hiding assets in a divorce is illegal," Artie explained. "It's not just unethical, it's financial fraud. The judge can award you more than 50% as a penalty. In some cases, judges give the wronged spouse all of the hidden assets as punishment." "So I could get everything?" I asked. "Possibly," Artie said. "At minimum, you'll get 50% of all assets, including the hidden ones. But the judge might award you 60, 70, even 80% depending on how egregious he finds Sterling's conduct." "And the criminal charges?" Those just got worse, Artie said grimly. Sterling's not just facing perjury charges for lying in court. He's now facing potential charges for financial fraud, tax evasion on the unreported income, and possibly money laundering depending on how he moved these funds. He could go to prison, Artie concluded. This is serious. 5 days later, we were back in court for a hearing on the forensic accounting findings. Sterling arrived looking worse than I'd ever seen him. He'd lost weight. His face was drawn and pale. His expensive suit hung loosely on his frame. Burl Stone was no longer representing him. Sterling had a new lawyer, Homer Wright, who specialized in criminal defense. The fact that Sterling had switched to a criminal lawyer told me how seriously he was taking the potential charges. Judge Martinez called the hearing to order. We're here to review the forensic accounting report on the Harper marital estate, Judge Martinez began. Ms. Chen, I've reviewed Ms. Davis's report. It's quite extensive. Yes, Your Honor, Artie agreed. Ms. Davis is here to present her findings. Pearlie Davis took the stand and was sworn in. Ms. Davis, please summarize your findings for the court, Judge Martinez said. Your Honor, my investigation revealed that Mr. Harper has systematically concealed at least $8 million in assets from his wife over the past 15 years. Pearlie began. She walked through each category of hidden assets: the properties, the offshore accounts, the second business, the shell corporation investments. She showed bank records, property deeds, business filings, and transfer documents. Mr. Harper didn't just fail to disclose these assets, Pearlie explained. He actively concealed them. He used false names, shell corporations, and complex transfers specifically designed to hide ownership from his wife. This wasn't accidental, Pearlie emphasized. This was deliberate, sophisticated financial deception executed over many years. In your professional opinion, what was Mr. Harper's intent? Judge Martinez asked. To retain sole control of these assets in the event of divorce, Pearlie said. The pattern suggests he began hiding assets around 2010 and accelerated after 2016. This coincides with when his affair began, suggesting he was preparing for eventual marital dissolution while keeping his wife unaware. Thank you, Ms. Davis, Judge Martinez said. He turned to Sterling. Mr. Harper, you have an opportunity to respond to these findings. Sterling's lawyer Homer Wright stood. Your Honor, my client acknowledges some of these assets exist, but disputes the characterization of their concealment. Oh, Judge Martinez said skeptically. How does he characterize owning 5 properties his wife knew nothing about? These properties were business investments, Homer said. Mr. Harper didn't actively conceal them. He simply never mentioned them because they were business-related, not personal. And the offshore accounts, Judge Martinez asked. Also business-related, Homer claimed. Used for international transactions related to Harper Industries. Mr. Wright, Judge Martinez said with clear skepticism, are you seriously arguing that your client forgot to mention $8 million in assets during a divorce proceeding? Not forgot, Your Honor, Homer said carefully. My client admits he should have disclosed these assets, but he maintains there was no criminal intent to defraud his wife. Just civil intent to defraud her, Judge Martinez asked dryly. Your Honor, Homer started. Mr. Wright, I've been a judge for 23 years, Judge Martinez interrupted. I've seen many divorce cases involving hidden assets. This is one of the most egregious. Your client didn't just fail to mention an asset or two. He created an entire parallel financial empire specifically designed to be hidden from his wife. That demonstrates clear intent to defraud, Judge Martinez continued. Not just poor disclosure, deliberate, calculated deception over many years. Sterling sat at the defendant's table, looking like he might be sick. Your Honor, if I may, Homer said, my client is willing to negotiate a settlement that addresses Mrs. Harper's concerns. I'm not interested in negotiations right now, Judge Martinez said firmly. I'm interested in justice, and justice requires that Mrs. Harper receive not just what she's entitled to, but also compensation for her husband's fraud. Therefore, Judge Martinez announced, I'm ruling that Mrs. Harper is entitled to 65% of all marital assets, including the newly discovered hidden assets. Mr. Harper will retain 35%. Sterling's jaw dropped again, the same shocked expression he'd had when I first presented my evidence. Your Honor, you can't, Homer protested. I absolutely can, Judge Martinez said. This is within my discretion for cases involving hidden assets and fraud. Mr. Harper attempted to steal from his wife. The court will not reward that behavior. Additionally, the judge continued, I'm ordering Mr. Harper to pay all of Mrs. Harper's legal fees, including the cost of the forensic accounting. Those fees total approximately $180,000 to date. And finally, Judge Martinez said, I'm referring this matter to both the district attorney and the IRS. The DA will investigate potential criminal charges. The IRS will investigate potential tax evasion related to unreported income from these hidden assets. Sterling looked like he might faint. This hearing is adjourned, Judge Martinez said. We'll reconvene in 60 days to finalize the divorce settlement. Mr. Harper, I strongly suggest you cooperate fully with both the DA and IRS investigations. Continued obstruction will result in additional penalties. The gavel banged. After the hearing, Sterling's lawyer pulled me aside. Mrs. Harper, my client would like to speak with you about a settlement, Homer said. A settlement, I repeated. The judge just ruled on the asset division. Yes, but there's still the issue of the criminal investigation, Homer said. My client is willing to offer you an even more generous settlement if you'll agree to ask the DA not to prosecute. How generous? I asked, curious. 70%. Then he can face criminal prosecution, I said firmly. Those are my terms. If Sterling wants to avoid charges and pay only 70% instead of potentially losing everything to criminal penalties, he'll accept my conditions. I'll present the terms to his lawyer, Artie said. 24 hours later, Artie called me back. He agreed, Artie said. Sterling will write the letter and read it to your children. He's not happy about it, but he agreed. When? I asked. This weekend, Artie said. I drafted a settlement agreement. Once Sterling provides the letter and reads it to your children as you've specified, you'll sign the agreement and make the statement to the DA. This will all be over within a week. Good, I said. Winnie, are you sure about this? Artie asked. Requiring him to confess to his children is going to be humiliating for Sterling. He might back out at the last minute. If he backs out, he faces prosecution, I said. He'll follow through. His pride might be wounded, but his fear of prison is stronger. You've really thought this through, Artie said with admiration in her voice. I've had 45 years to understand how Sterling thinks, I said. I know exactly what will hurt him most, and it's not money or even prison time. It's having his children know the truth about who he really is. 3 days later, Sterling's lawyer delivered the letter. It was 3 pages, handwritten, signed, and notarized. I read it alone in Artie's office. To whom it may concern. I, Sterling Harper, am writing this letter to set the record straight about my marriage to Winnie Harper and the divorce proceedings. I lied in court when I testified that my wife contributed nothing to our marital wealth. The truth is that Winnie was instrumental in building Harper Industries in its early years. From 1985 to 1995, she served as operations manager, running daily operations while I focused on sales and business development. Without her contributions, the company would not have survived its early years. I systematically excluded Winnie from the business after 1995 not because she was incapable, but because I wanted sole control. I stopped valuing her input, stopped discussing business decisions with her, and gradually erased her role in the company's history. I forged Winnie's signature on documents in 1998 that falsely claimed I was sole owner of Harper Industries. Winnie never consented to this. I committed fraud to steal her ownership stake in a business we'd built together. I hid approximately $8 million in assets from Winnie over 15 years. I purchased properties, opened offshore accounts, invested in other businesses, and created shell corporations, all without her knowledge. I did this deliberately to maintain control and to ensure I could leave the marriage with assets she didn't know existed. I lied under oath in divorce court when I claimed all assets were disclosed and that Winnie had no claim to the business. I perjured myself to try to cheat my wife out of what she was legally entitled to. I had an affair with Dovie Marshall for 7 years while still married to Winnie. I disrespected my marriage vows and treated my wife with contempt while she remained faithful and loyal. Everything I did, the forgery, the hidden assets, the lies in court, the affair, was wrong. Winnie deserved better. She deserved a husband who honored her contributions, valued her partnership, and treated her with respect. Instead, she got a husband who lied, cheated, and tried to steal from her. I am writing this letter not because I want to, but because it's part of settling the divorce and avoiding criminal prosecution. But that doesn't make the contents any less true. I did all of these things. I harmed my wife for years, and she had every right to expose me and fight for what she deserved. I'm sorry, Winnie, not because I got caught, but because what I did was fundamentally wrong. You deserved better than me. Sterling Harper, notarized signature and date. I read the letter 3 times. It wasn't everything I wanted. The tone was still somewhat self-justifying, still minimizing his actions in subtle ways. But it was acknowledgement. It was admission. It was truth, written in his own hand. This will do, I told Artie. The reading is scheduled for tomorrow, Artie said. Your 3 children will be there. Sterling will read this letter to them. Are you sure you want to be present? Yes, I said firmly. I want to see his face when he has to admit to his children what he did. Subscribe now, smash that like button, and turn on NOTFICTONS. Drop a comment. Do you think Winnie made the right choice with her settlement terms? How would you react if your parent confessed to this? Where are you watching from? The meeting was scheduled for Saturday afternoon at Artie Chen's law office, neutral territory, where Sterling would read his confession to our 3 adult children. Our children, Royal 43, Zenobia 41, and Homer 38. All 3 had been kept mostly in the dark about the divorce proceedings. Sterling had told them his version, that I was being unreasonable, greedy, trying to take everything he'd worked for. They were about to learn the truth. I arrived early and sat in the conference room with Artie. My stomach was in knots. I'd spent 45 years protecting my children from the harsh realities of their father's character. Now they were about to see him clearly for the first time. Are you ready for this? Artie asked gently. No, I admitted, but it needs to happen. They deserve to know the truth. Sterling arrived next, accompanied by his lawyer Homer Wright. Sterling looked terrible, like he'd aged 10 years in the past 2 months. His hands were shaking as he carried the notarized letter. Winnie, Sterling acknowledged me with a nod. Sterling, I replied coolly. Then our children arrived together. They'd clearly coordinated, unsure what to expect from this mysterious mandatory meeting their parents had called. Mom, Dad, Royal said, looking between us. What's going on? Why are we meeting at a lawyer's office? Sit down, I said gently. Your father has something to tell you. The 3 children sat, looking confused and concerned. Sterling remained standing, the letter clutched in his hand. Dad, what is this about? Zenobia asked. Sterling glanced at his lawyer, who nodded encouragingly. Then Sterling looked at me. For a moment, I saw something in his eyes, shame, perhaps, or just resignation. I've done things I'm not proud of, Sterling began, his voice unsteady. Things I need to tell you about, things that explain why your mother and I are getting divorced. We know you're getting divorced, Homer said. But you told us Mom was being unreasonable about the settlement, that she wanted money she didn't earn. I lied, Sterling said bluntly. I've been lying to you for years, and today I'm going to tell you the truth. He unfolded the letter with trembling hands and began to read. Sterling's voice was barely above a whisper as he read the letter to our children. With each admission, each confession of wrongdoing, I watched our children's faces change. Confusion gave way to shock. Shock gave way to horror. Horror gave way to hurt and anger. When Sterling reached the part about forging my signature, Royal interrupted. "You forged Mom's signature?" Royal asked, his voice rising. "You stole her ownership of the company." "Yes," Sterling admitted, lowering the letter. "In 1998, I filed paperwork claiming I was sole owner and forged your mother's signature on the documents dissolving our partnership." "Why?" Zenobia demanded. "Why would you do that?" "Because I wanted complete control," Sterling said. "I didn't want to share decisions or profits. I convinced myself I'd done all the work, that your mother's contributions were insignificant, so I took what I wanted without her consent." "That's fraud," Homer said, his voice shaking. "That's a crime, Dad." "I know," Sterling said quietly. "Keep reading," I said firmly. This was hard for all of us, but it needed to be done completely. Sterling continued reading. The hidden properties, the offshore accounts, the second business. $8 million in concealed assets built over 15 years. $8 million, Royal repeated in disbelief. "You hid $8 million from Mom." "I was preparing," Sterling said weakly. "I knew I might want to leave the marriage someday. I wanted assets your mother couldn't claim." "That's not preparing," Zenobia said angrily. "That's stealing, from your own wife, from our mother." Sterling continued reading. The affair with Dovie Marshall. 7 years of infidelity while I remained faithful. "You cheated on Mom," Homer said, his voice breaking. "For 7 years." "Yes," Sterling admitted. "And Mom knew?" Zenobia asked, looking at me. "I found out in 2018, I confirmed. "Your father told me to accept it or leave. Said divorce would be expensive and I'd get nothing because everything was in his name." "Oh my God," Royal said, putting his head in his hands. "Dad, how could you?" Sterling finished reading the letter. The courtroom lies, the perjury, the systematic erasure of my contributions over decades. When he was done, he folded the letter and stood there silently, unable to meet anyone's eyes. The conference room was completely silent for a long moment. Then Royal spoke. "So everything you told us about the divorce was a lie," Royal said flatly. "You said Mom was being greedy and unreasonable, but the truth is you were trying to steal from her. You committed fraud. You hid millions. You lied in court under oath." "Yes," Sterling said. "And Mom's not the bad guy here," Zenobia said, realization dawning. You're the one who destroyed this marriage. You're the one who betrayed everything." "I made mistakes," Sterling started. "MISTAKES," Homer shouted, standing up. "Dad, these aren't mistakes. A mistake is forgetting an anniversary. This is systematic, calculated, criminal behavior over DCADES." "Homer, please," Sterling tried. "No," Homer interrupted. "You lied to us. For months, you've been telling us Mom was being unreasonable, that she wanted money she didn't deserve, that you'd built everything and she'd contributed nothing." "We believed you," Homer continued, tears streaming down his face. "We sided with you against our own mother, and the whole time you were lying, you were the one who'd stolen from her. You were the criminal." "I didn't want you to think badly of me," Sterling said weakly. "So you made us think badly of Mom instead," Zenobia said, her voice cold. "You let us judge her, blame her, think less of her, all to protect yourself." Sterling had no answer. Royal turned to me. "Mom, did you know about all of this, when we were telling you to be reasonable with Dad?" "I suspected," I said quietly, "but I didn't have proof until I started investigating. That's why I spent 6 months gathering evidence before filing for divorce." "And we were on Dad's side," Royal said, shame in his voice. "We told you to be fair, to not take everything, to remember Dad had built the business." "You didn't know," I said gently. "Your father is very good at lying." "We should have trusted you," Zenobia said, crying now. "We should have known you wouldn't ask for anything you weren't entitled to. We should have questioned Dad's version instead of just believing him." "I understand why you believed him," I said. "He's your father, you wanted to believe the best of him." "But he didn't deserve that benefit of the doubt," Homer said bitterly. "Not after everything he did to you." Sterling stood awkwardly, clearly wanting to leave, but trapped by the weight of what he'd just confessed. "Is there anything else you want to say?" Artie Chen asked Sterling professionally. "Any explanation or context?" "Just that I'm sorry," Sterling said. "To Winnie and to our children, I know sorry doesn't fix anything, but I am sorry." "Sorry you did it or sorry you got caught?" Royal asked harshly. "Both," Sterling admitted. "I'm sorry I hurt your mother. And yes, I'm sorry I got caught. If I'm being completely honest, which apparently I need to be, I wish I'd never been exposed. I wish I could have walked away with everything while your mother believed the lies." "At least you're finally being honest," Zenobia said. "That's more than you've been in years." "What happens now?" Homer asked. "Legally, I mean." "Your parents have reached a settlement," Artie explained. "Your mother will receive 70% of all marital assets, approximately $18 million. Your father will retain 30%. In exchange, your mother will make a statement to the district attorney requesting leniency regarding criminal charges." "He should go to prison," Royal said flatly. "That's not your decision," Sterling's lawyer Homer Wright interjected. "Your mother has agreed to this settlement." "Why?" Zenobia asked me. "Mom, why would you let him off? He deserves to be prosecuted." "Because I want this to be over," I said simply. "I've spent 6 months fighting. I've won what I'm entitled to financially. Criminal prosecution would mean months or years more of trials, appeals, continued connection to your father. I'm ready to move on." "Plus," I added, "I got what I really wanted, the truth. Your father has admitted, in writing and in front of witnesses, everything he did. He can never again claim I contributed nothing. He can never again tell people I'm being unreasonable or greedy. The truth is documented forever." "That matters more to you than seeing him punished?" Homer asked. "Yes," I said, "because the punishment I've given him is worse than prison. He has to live with his children knowing exactly who he is. He has to face the fact that the people whose respect he valued most now know he's a liar, a cheat, and a fraud." I looked at Sterling. "That's the real punishment, not the money, not the criminal charges, but knowing your children see you clearly now." Sterling's face crumpled. For the first time in the entire divorce process, I saw genuine emotion from him, not anger, not defensiveness, but devastation. "Do you hate me?" Sterling asked our children, his voice breaking. The three of them looked at each other, then at their father. "I don't know what I feel," Royal said. "I'm angry, disappointed, hurt, but hate, I don't know. I'm having trouble reconciling the dad I thought I knew with the person who did these things," Zenobia said. "Right now, I don't want to see you or talk to you. Maybe that will change. Maybe it won't." "You broke Mom's trust," Homer said. "But you also broke ours. You made us complicit in your lies by feeding us false information about her. That's going to take a long time to forgive." "I understand," Sterling said quietly. "I'll accept whatever relationship you're willing to have with me going forward." After the children left, all three hugging me and pointedly not hugging their father, Artie and Sterling's lawyer finalized the settlement. I signed documents agreeing to the 70-30 split of assets. Sterling signed documents acknowledging his fraud and agreeing to the terms. We both signed the divorce agreement dissolving our 45-year marriage. "I'll draft the statement for the DA," Artie told me. "Basically saying that while you believe Sterling's actions were wrong, you believe the civil settlement is adequate punishment, and you don't wish to pursue criminal charges." "Will that definitely stop prosecution?" I asked. "Not definitely," Artie admitted. "The DA can prosecute anyway if they think the crimes warrant it. But in practice, DAs rarely prosecute divorcing spouses against the victim's wishes unless the fraud is truly egregious. Given that Sterling has admitted everything, agreed to pay back what he stole, and will be publicly known as someone who committed fraud, the DA will probably accept your statement and decline prosecution," Artie concluded. "When is this all final?" I asked. 30 days, Artie said. "The divorce will be official, the assets will be transferred, and you'll be free to start your new life." I looked at Sterling, who was signing his own copies of the documents. This man I'd spent 45 years with. This man I'd built a life alongside. This man who'd betrayed me in every way possible. "Sterling," I said. He looked up, surprised I was addressing him directly. "I meant what I said in the letter," Sterling said. "I am sorry. I know you don't believe me, but I am." "I believe you're sorry you got caught," I said. "I believe you're sorry you lost the respect of your children. I believe you're sorry you have to give up millions of dollars. But I don't believe you're genuinely sorry for betraying me." "That's not true," Sterling protested. "I do regret hurting you." "Maybe you do," I allowed. "But it doesn't matter anymore. We're done. In 30 days, we'll be officially divorced, and we'll never have to see each other again." "Winnie, I know things are bad now, but maybe someday," Sterling started. "No," I interrupted firmly. "There's no someday. There's no future reconciliation. There's no friendship. There's nothing. You destroyed everything we had, and I'm not interested in rebuilding anything with you." "We were married for 45 years, Sterling said desperately. "That has to mean something." "It does mean something," I agreed. "It means I wasted 45 years on someone who didn't value me, and I'm not wasting one more minute." I gathered my things and walked out of the conference room without looking back. 6 months after the divorce was finalized, I stood in the living room of my new house, a beautiful 3-bedroom home I'd purchased with my divorce settlement. It was smaller than the house Sterling and I had shared, but it was entirely mine. Every piece of furniture chosen by me, every decoration reflecting my taste, every room filled with things that made me happy rather than things Sterling had wanted. My children visited regularly. Our relationships had actually improved since the divorce. They'd apologized repeatedly for not supporting me during the marriage's final years, for believing Sterling's lies about me, for not questioning his narrative. "We should have known you wouldn't ask for anything you didn't deserve," Royal had told me. "You're not greedy or vindictive. If you were fighting for something, there was a good reason." "You didn't have all the information," I'd reassured him. "Your father is very convincing." Their relationships with Sterling had suffered significantly. Royal and Zenobia maintained minimal contact, perfunctory phone calls on holidays, nothing more. Homer had cut contact completely. "I can't respect someone who did what he did," Homer had told me. "Maybe someday, but not now." As for Sterling, I'd heard through mutual acquaintances that he was struggling. The affair with Dovie Marshall had ended. Apparently, she'd lost interest once Sterling's finances were diminished. He'd sold the family house and moved into a modest condo. He was still wealthy by most standards with his $7.5 million, but it was a far cry from the $25 million empire he'd planned to keep for himself. More than the financial loss, he'd suffered reputational damage. The story of his fraud had spread through business circles. He was known as the man who'd stolen from his wife, lied in court, and been exposed by the woman he'd underestimated. I felt no satisfaction in his struggles, but I felt no sympathy either. He'd made his choices. Now he lived with the consequences. One evening, as I sat on my porch watching the sunset, my daughter Zenobia stopped by. "How are you doing, Mom?" Zenobia asked, sitting beside me. "I'm good," I said, and I meant it. Really good, actually. "No regrets about the divorce?" "None," I said firmly. "I should have done it years ago." "Why didn't you?" Zenobia asked. "When you found out about the affair in 2018, why did you stay?" "Fear," I admitted. "I was 61 years old. I'd been with your father for 40 years. I didn't know how to be alone. I didn't know if I could support myself. I was terrified of starting over." "But you did start over," Zenobia pointed out, "and you're thriving." "I am," I agreed, "because I finally realized that being alone was less lonely than being with someone who didn't value me. That starting over at 67 was better than staying miserable until I died." "I'm proud of you," Zenobia said, "for fighting back, for gathering evidence, for not letting Dad steal everything you'd earned." "Thank you," I said. "That means a lot." "Can I ask you something?" Zenobia said hesitantly. "Do you think you'll ever date again, get remarried?" "I don't know," I said honestly. Right now, I'm enjoying being single, making my own decisions, not answering to anyone, but maybe someday if I met the right person. You deserve to be happy, Zenobia said. You deserve someone who values you, respects you, treats you as an equal partner. I do deserve that, I agreed. And that's something I learned through this process. My worth isn't determined by how your father treated me. I have value regardless of whether anyone recognizes it. That's a powerful realization, Zenobia said. It is, I agreed. And it's one I wish I'd learned 40 years ago, but better late than never. 1 year after the divorce was finalized, I received an unexpected letter from Sterling. I almost threw it away without reading it, but curiosity got the better of me. Dear Winnie, I know you probably don't want to hear from me. I know I've caused you immeasurable pain and I don't deserve your time or attention, but I wanted to write to you anyway. It's been a year since our divorce was finalized. A year since I had to confess everything to our children. A year since I lost my marriage, most of my wealth, and the respect of everyone who matters to me. I've spent this year in therapy, trying to understand how I became the person who could do what I did to you, trying to figure out how I justified the lies, the fraud, the betrayal. What I've learned is uncomfortable. I never saw you as an equal partner. Even in the early years, when we were working side by side, I saw myself as the leader and you as the helper. I saw my contributions as essential and yours as supportive. As the business grew and I became successful, that attitude hardened into something worse. I began to believe I'd done it all myself, that your contributions were insignificant, that I deserved sole credit and sole benefit from everything we'd built. I erased you from our story, not just in legal documents, but in my own mind. I convinced myself that the narrative where I was the brilliant, self-made businessman and you were the dependent wife was true. I needed that narrative to justify taking everything. But it wasn't true. You were essential to building Harper Industries. You were a full partner in our marriage. You deserved far better than what I gave you. I'm not writing to ask for forgiveness. I don't deserve it. I'm not writing to ask for reconciliation. I know that's impossible. I'm writing to tell you that you were right about everything. You contributed significantly to our success. You deserved half of everything. You had every right to expose my fraud and fight for what was yours. I lied in court. My jaw dropped when you showed the evidence, and I deserved everything that followed. I hope you're happy now, Winnie. I hope you're living the life you deserve, and I hope someday our children can forgive me for what I did to their mother. Sterling. I read the letter twice, then folded it and put it away. Was it sincere? Maybe. Sterling had certainly lost enough to prompt genuine self-reflection. Did it change anything? No. An apology, even a good one, couldn't undo 45 years of being undervalued and dismissed. But it was acknowledgement, one final admission that I'd been right all along. I didn't respond to the letter. I didn't need to. Sterling had said what he needed to say, and I'd heard it. That was enough. 2 years after my divorce, I was invited to speak at a women's empowerment conference about my experience. For 45 years, I believed the narrative my husband created. I told the audience of 300 women that I'd contributed little to our wealth, that I should be grateful for what he provided, that I had no right to claim any credit for our success. I believed this even though I'd spent 10 years working alongside him to build his business, even though I'd supported his career for 4 decades, even though I'd sacrificed my own ambitions to enable his. Why did I believe it? I asked. Because he was so confident in his version of reality, and because our society reinforces the narrative that men are the builders and women are the supporters. That paid labor counts, but unpaid labor doesn't. That business contributions are valuable, but domestic contributions aren't. But when I filed for divorce, I had to confront the truth. That narrative was a lie, I said. I had built, I had contributed, I had created value, and I deserved recognition and compensation for that. My husband lied in court about my contributions, I continued. He stood under oath and claimed I'd done nothing, that I deserved nothing, that everything was his alone. His jaw dropped when I showed the evidence, I said, smiling at the memory. He couldn't believe I'd documented everything, that I'd found witnesses, that I'd proven every lie he'd told. He thought I was weak, I explained. Submissive, too scared to fight back. He thought he could steal from me and I'd just accept it because I didn't know any better. He was wrong, I said firmly. And that's my message to all of you. Don't let anyone underestimate you. Don't let anyone erase your contributions. Don't let anyone tell you that you deserve less than what you've earned. Document everything, I advised. Protect yourself, know your worth, and if someone tries to steal what's yours, fight back with evidence, determination, and the confidence that you deserve justice. My husband lied in court, I concluded. His jaw dropped when I showed the evidence, and I won everything I was entitled to, not through anger or revenge, but through preparation, truth, and refusing to accept his lies. The standing ovation lasted 5 minutes. After my speech, dozens of women approached me with their own stories. Husbands who'd hidden assets, partners who'd claimed sole credit for joint efforts, families who'd dismissed women's contributions. "You've inspired me to fight back," one woman told me. "I've been accepting my husband's narrative that I don't deserve half our business. But you're right, I do deserve it, and I'm going to prove it." "Document everything," I advised her. "Build your case, and when you're ready, show him you're not as powerless as he thinks." That woman, and dozens like her, reminded me why I'd chosen to speak publicly about my experience. Not for revenge against Sterling, but to help other women understand they don't have to accept narratives that diminish their worth. 3 years after my divorce, at age 70, I sat in my garden reflecting on the journey I'd taken. I'd lost a 45-year marriage, but I'd gained my self-respect. I'd lost the comfortable lie that I was in a partnership, but I'd gained the truth about who my husband really was. I'd lost the illusion of security, but I'd gained actual financial security through fighting for what I deserved. And most importantly, I'd learned that it's never too late to stand up for yourself, never too late to demand truth, never too late to fight for justice. My husband had lied in court. He'd stood under oath and tried to steal everything I'd helped build. His jaw had dropped when I showed the evidence, the documents, the witnesses, the proof that every word he'd spoken was a lie. But the real shock wasn't the evidence itself. It was the realization that the quiet, submissive wife he'd taken for granted was actually strong, smart, and 10 steps ahead of him. He'd underestimated me for decades, and that underestimation was his downfall. Because I'd been paying attention, documenting, preparing, building my case while he thought I was just accepting his lies. And when the moment came, when he stood in court lying under oath, I was ready. I had the truth, I had the evidence, and I had the determination to make sure justice was served. My husband lied in court. His jaw dropped when I showed the evidence. And I walked away with everything I deserved, my share of our wealth, my dignity, my freedom, and my truth. That's the power of preparation, the power of documentation, the power of refusing to accept lies. And that's the lesson I hope every woman who hears my story takes away. You are stronger than anyone who underestimates you realizes. You are smarter than anyone who dismisses you believes. And you are entitled to everything you've earned, regardless of what anyone tells you. Fight for it, document it, prove it. And watch their jaws drop when you show them the evidence. What an incredible journey. Winnie's husband lied in court for 45 minutes straight, claiming she contributed nothing. But she had documented everything for 6 months. Bank records, forged signatures, $8 million in hidden assets. When she presented the evidence, his jaw dropped. She won 70% of everything, $18 million. He had to confess to their children. He lost their respect. And Winnie started a new life of freedom, dignity, and truth. This story proves that documentation is your strongest weapon. Never accept someone else's narrative about your worth. It's never too late to fight for what you deserve. Preparation beats deception every time. The truth always comes out eventually. You're stronger than anyone who underestimates you realizes. If this story inspired you, please subscribe to this channel for more empowering stories. Smash that like button. Turn on notifications for new content. Drop a comment. What part of Winnie's strategy impressed you most? Have you ever had to document evidence to protect yourself? Where are you watching from? United States, Canada, United Kingdom, Jamaica, South Africa, Australia, Trinidad, India, Philippines? Let me know. Remember, if someone tries to erase your contributions, diminish your worth, or steal what you've earned, document everything. Build your case in silence.